Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Brian, and tonight we're tackling another episode of the White Lotus Dojo, with our next character being the one and only Cetrion. Now, actually, I'm just going to adjust my mic real quick. There we go. Now, Cetrion is the second Elder God, first female playable goddess, and the only Elder God in the game series so far who has not, and I repeat, not been, shall we say, dethroned. Her brother Shinnok was dethroned, but she was not. Now, we're going to start from this variation as usual and pick our next character, which is going to be final newcomer Collector, just to get him out of the way. And I'm going to beat up Profiteer because time stuff. And we're going to go to the prehistoric age! Because guess what? I like dinosaurs. Sue me. Now, Cetrion is generally considered to be a zoning character. So she doesn't exactly have much in the way of crazy combos. But what she does have is that she has some really good special physical attacks and actually fairly decent combo ability despite this fact. Now I'm just gonna... Okay. And then her hop attacks, and then... Yeah, we'll tag her to Ward Throw because it does have a crushing blow. And of course, we're gonna have easy crushing blows on and double up on the frame data, why not? So we're going to start off with Low Wind. It's an 8-frame down 1 that strikes mid. Plus 10 on hit, has decent range, and the thing is it can hit from here, but I don't think Cetrion really has a tradable option here. And then if I go auto and random, it's -5. So not safe, but not punishable either. Then we have Rising God Palm. It's a 10-frame uppercut, which means, yes, this is slower than Cetrion, than Jay's. Not quite as good as Vanity Air. Does have a good crushing blow, though. It's -20 on Flawless Block and -10 on Normal Block. Then we have Vapor Push, which is a high with 11 frames and doesn't really have much of a hurt box on Cetrion, but can hurt the opponent. It's -2 on block and knocks down. And it's pretty good for, you know, just, let's say, ending a quick combo, because it knocks down, leaving her at +26. Now, she is at a range where some wake-ups could potentially hit her, but not very many can. The thing to remember, though, is that this is a high, so it can be ducked under and uppercut punished. Then we have Crushing Heal, which it also does 70 damage, but leaves the opponent standing. I like to end my combos with this, or keep them going this way, because it's a fairly quick button. It's 16 frames, but it does allow you to continue combos, at least in theory. Guess not with Tendril Pull, but let's try this. Yeah, because it's special cancelable, which is what makes it a really key, really good special move. Unlike Vapor Push. Oh, Vapor Push is special cancelable. Never mind what I said. So both of these would be really good. Let's say you get this crushing blow, and then potentially use either Vapor Push or Crushing Heal in order to get the Geyser, which is not a universal special move, but we'll talk about that in one of her tournament variations. Then I also forgot to mention Crystal Kick. It's a 9-frame low, a decent low that leaves her -5 regardless of block, but has decent range. And then we have Crystal Heal, which has very similar range, but is 10 frames, knocks the opponent back, and is -5 on either form of block. And then Rising Volcano is her sweep. And what's nice about it is because it has really good range, it knocks down really well. But it's minus 10 on block and minus 15 on flawless block. So some opponents can actually punish Cetrion if she goes for a risky sweep. But I believe this sweep can actually anti-air? Not really. Okay, I thought it could, but it can't. Then we have Boulder Slam. 14 frame, fairly decent ranged, short-ranged attack. So, or short hop attack, not short range, short hop. It has pretty decent range. I can hit you from about here. It kind of reminds me of like a pseudo-airborne version of Tremors Forward 2. So that's why I kind of like this thing, just fake rock smash. But it's minus 15 on block. Then there's Heel Spike, which is 11 frames. Looks kind of goofy in my opinion. Is minus 18 on flawless block, minus 13 on normal block, but I think the rock has a little more pushback. They're both, the rock is also active slightly longer, but really it's interchangeable which one we want. Now, Cetrion does have a crushing blow off of one of her throws, and that's her forward throw. But in order to do this normally, you have to pull it off inside of one of her auras, and we'll talk about that in one of her tournament variations. But suffice it to say, she does have those auras. And finally, before I trim this, we're going to very quickly talk about her wake-up attacks and flawless block attacks, of course. And first up is World Ender, which is an 8-frame mid. And the angle actually makes it a half-decent anti-air, too. So if the opponent jumps in, which I'm going to simulate, this should actually hit. I'm also going to very quickly do this. Oh. And because we've got to get a block going. On normal block, it's minus 8, so it is punishable. And on flawless block, it's minus 13, which makes it more punishable. But as you can see, it hits jumping opponents fairly well. Next is Geo Strike, which is a sort of AoE launcher. And does he have it in this variation? I don't think so, but I'm gonna very quickly look. No, he doesn't have it in this variation, so I'm not gonna bother. But if Collector had a teleport, I'm pretty sure Geo Strike would actually hit. So I'm going to very quickly switch Cetrion over to... There we go. Okay, so I'm going to try and beat a teleport. Yes, I can. And if it beats a teleport, of course it launches. So you can get combos this way. However, just be mindful that Cetrion doesn't have too many ways to combo opponents if they're airborne. Some strings won't even hit, or some special moves won't even hit because of how long it takes for them to activate and such. And one thing also to keep in mind, ooh, I actually got that, that's pretty good, is that on block, it didn't even work. Okay, hold on. Let's put me in the corner then. There we go. I'm minus 15. And I believe... Yeah, it's minus 15 regardless. That's still really bad. And I mean that in the sense of, oh, geez, that's going to hurt. Now, I'm going to switch back. I'm going to go back to Profiteer, and then I'm going to be talking about combo strings. Now, as you can see, Cetrion doesn't have nearly as many strings as a character like Sonya, or Jax, or Johnny Cage. But that's not what makes Cetrion really, really strong. Sometimes it's quality over quantity, and we're going to start with Windstorm. This knocks the opponent back, which is very dangerous for some characters because guess what? Now you have to deal with Cetrion and her projectiles, and she has quite a few ways to keep you at bay. However, the whole string is minus 8, and I don't believe there's... However, I don't believe there is a flawless block gap there. No. So You can't interrupt this string per se, but it has really good one of my words here. It has really good range overall. Not quite start of the match, but as you can see, fairly easy to land. And then you can go for a low sweep, similar to her actual sweep, in order to knock the opponent slightly upwards and be plus 22. However, where this string pushes the opponent further back, there's a flawless block gap and imminent eruption, and is minus 12 overall. So I really wouldn't recommend throwing this one out there unless you're just looking to end a string or something. It's not the greatest string of hers, and one that you won't see too often. Next we have Seismic Energy, which ends in a tricky little low. It's minus 11 on block, but there's no flawless block gap, so it's very continuous. You can use this to end certain combos again, and if we were to end it in a if we were to use this to end a combo, I have to remember to amplify that. The opponent is knocked back, and again, at about this range, Cetrion can start throwing projectiles at you, and you really don't want Cetrion to be throwing projectiles at you. Then we have Fire Nado. This is the most common string you're going to see Cetrion to end their combos in, because it knocks back, hits the most amount of time, and leaves her at plus 30. So she can do this, throw in a quick backdash, throw a projectile, and all of a sudden you are at her mercy. So what you'll often see is this string on a punish and knock the opponent backwards with the rest of the string in order to get pretty decent damage. And speaking of that rock, that's Fire and Brimstone. The final hit comes from a 7 damage overhead, so if that was part of an ender here, that would make for a good mix-up, but Cetrion doesn't need mix-ups. The full version of Fire and Brimstone is minus 9, but has good pushback, so very few characters are going to be able to punish her unless they flawless block the rock, which would require them to basically misspace their blocking. And the nice thing is that rock doesn't really offer Cetrion's hurtbox up. Fire Nado, however, is minus 5, so it's actually safer, leaves the opponent closer, and does fairly decent chip. In fact, in some situations, this can actually chip kill, which is not very common for Cetrion because she doesn't have many rapid-hitting moves, like Baraka's Chop Chop, for instance. Then we have Unlimited Potential. I think this is Cetrion's most damaging string overall, and is a pretty tricky string because it goes low overhead. And in some variations, this can lead to a natural mix-up. However, flawless block gap in the middle there, and in fact is an interruptible gap. So if I were to play as a Collector for a minute and have Cetrion do this, okay, I can't uppercut. Okay, so it's not working as I had thought it would. 8 frames, 13, 12, 14, 10 frames, 9 frames. I guess Collector's not quite fast enough for this, but some characters can definitely see that coming and go for something that would punish. One thing that could definitely work, though, is because Fatal Blows have armor. If you go for this string on block and the opponent has Fatal Blow, you just lost a third of your health. However, the thing to note about those overhead kicks is that, yes, they're minus 9 on block, Oh, they're just -9, period. So it's punishable. So she's sticking her neck out for this. For what? 9.5% damage? She's sticking her neck out for an extra 9.5% damage. So you'll see Cetrions go for... They'll usually just go for the low on block, but it's -10. This part is -4, so they might stop here, and that's fine. But if they ever overcommit, and even if they go for it, try beating them with either a really fast normal, or if you have Fatal Blow, just use Fatal Blow. It should, if you see her disappear, just mash Fatal Blow, and you should be fine. Finally, we have Life Cycle. This starts off a low and does decent damage, and is -5. And the nice thing is that back 3 reaches pretty far. But it's -8, so you have to commit to the full string to be as safe as possible, which is fine, because that just means a little extra chip damage. Just remember, you're not safe after this. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this in multiple parts. But we have, starting from the top, we have Natural Barrier. This is a 12-frame attack that on block is -20, but if you amplify, becomes -4. So, accidentally overcommit, just do this. Slight problem. There's a flawless block gap, and then that makes it -14, aka punishable. This has a Crushing Blow. And for it to Crushing Blow, a projectile has to be destroyed by the main wall, which means the opponent has to be fairly close to, and be foolish enough to throw a projectile at close enough range to get the face smashed in by a bunch of rocks. Yeah, and there is a far version, but far is a bit of a stretch. Normal, far. It just puts the wall a little bit further ahead, but that's the nature of the beast. This allows you to kind of beat projectiles a little bit further back, so from about here, and then clobber them. So that makes a little more sense. Then, I'm actually gonna untag Natural Barrier for a minute, and tag... I'm going to tag the air version. Well, I'm not going to tag the air versions because you know about that. And I'm just going to go for Tendril Pull and Boulder Bash and Bouncing Boulder. There. Because what's different about that in this variation is what you can do. Let's start with Hell's Wrath. Oh, before I forget to mention, yeah. No, wait, I mentioned the block data. It's -20 and then -4. Unless it's flawless block, then it's -14. Then we have Hell's Wrath. This can be done in the air, and in fact, with some good timing, you can even do it off of a short hop. So the opponent might think you're going for an overhead, but instead, you're going for Hell's Wrath. There's 3 different ranges, and I'll demonstrate from full screen. We have close, normal, and far. You amplify it, it becomes a beam. Unfortunately, it can never hit truly full screen, but it has really good range. Although, I wonder if that's true. No, basically the beam's angle is such that it's the same angle regardless of your height in the air. So just be mindful of that if you decide to do something sneaky like leap off of a projectile and go for Hell's Wrath, which can be a pretty disgusting mix-up if you go for something like this and then do that. Now you'll notice it pushes the enemy back, even on block. But even at this distance, it's -17, so -17 on block, and then you push them back. Very few attacks are 14 frames that can punish at this range, And you might think of teleport, but again, scorpion, duck, and uppercut, or you have your options. So, unless the opponent has meter or has particularly fast projectiles, you amplify, you're, generally safe. Then we have Tendril Pull. This thing is really slow, but is active for 11 frames, allowing you, under certain situations, to catch opponents out of the air. It's very tricky though, and I wouldn't recommend going for it all the time, but you absolutely can. Amplify to get a combo extender, which leaves the opponent open for a sizable period of time. Leaves them open for 84 frames. And you can even combo into throw. Not that I'd recommend it for the damage, but if you want a fairly easy brutality combo, you can do this, catch him with this, and go for either throw. Damage ain't bad, and if you get a brutality with this, it looks pretty freaking sweet. But here's the thing. On block, it's minus 35 at close range. Minus 35. I believe Cassie Cage's Fatal Blow can punish this, so hold on a second. I'm just going to throw a boulder. Yeah, it's minus 35 at full screen, aka full combo punishable by just about anything. So don't throw this out willy-nilly. Otherwise, you're going to be in for some serious hurt. Next, we have Bouncing Boulder and Boulder Bash. These are two different versions of the same attack. Summon a boulder and throw it. This is Cetrion's slowest projectile, but this has a big-time benefit. It's minus 2 on Flawless Block, which doesn't sound like much, but on normal block, it's plus 3, even at close range. This thing is super plus on block, so if the opponent is blocking, then they might be able to flawless block it and move in and save some chip, but if they can't, they're just going to be eating this all day, and then they're going to be forced to basically just sit there and take it. You can trap people this way. And yes, it's 50 frames of, and yes, it's 48 frames of startup. But if you're plus 23, that becomes effectively 25 frames, which is not much slower than that at most ranges. So that's something worth keeping in mind. Then there's Boulder Bash. This thing only hits airborne opponents. It might be tricky for me to pull off normally, but here's an example. Maybe the opponent should be jumping in, but yeah, let's have the opponent jump in, because that's about the only way I can think of that this would ever really connect. Because it is slow as hell. But look at that, it knocks the opponent back full screen, and if it connects on its own, oh, I forgot to talk about Tendril Pulse Crushing Blow, but we'll get to that later. If this connects on its own, it's a crushing blow with really good damage, and in certain variations, with the right timing, you can get full screen combos. It hurts, but it's very hard, but the timing is very, very tricky. But if you can get this down, man, and you have Fatal Blow, this is access to some of the craziest damage Cetrion has. Now, here's the thing about Tendril Pull. Tendril Pull has a crushing blow where the opponent has to block late. I don't really like this requirement. I'm pretty sure I know why it exists, but I don't like it. The idea, I think, is to catch somebody who failed to flawless block, because you have to block within the last few frames of a move. That happens, and you get the world's tiniest pop-up. I'm not even sure I can... Okay, I can get certain normals off, but it wouldn't be easy. You know what I mean? It's definitely Cetrion's worst crushing blow, both in terms of accessibility and in terms of just the benefit that you get. Again, what do you get for this? something that's basically only useful for a special cancel, like maybe in the corner, and of course it's a block late crushing blow, so it's hard. Now let's talk about variation-specific stuff, starting with Force of Nature. Okay. There's a lot to talk about in Force of Nature, because this variation really rocks. No, but seriously, this variation is all about rocks. First off, replacing the natural barrier is Shattering Boulder, which I don't believe beats projectiles, but has the added benefit of more range. In fact, this, in a sense, can act like a slightly faster version of the rock bounce, because it does the same amount of damage, it hits mid, and it can be potentially full screen. And it has a crushing blow, where the attack has to hit at its maximum range. So what I mean by that, so that's not to say, oh, I gotta hit this thing full screen. No. This has to connect. First I gotta set auto, random, and turn off easy crushing blows. That it has to hit at the maximum range of its hurt box, which just so happens to be full screen if you use the FAR version. So that's actually, so that is really odd, but I guess it makes sense. If you basically hit it right at the edge of the boulder, right at this edge, then you should be okay. So let me see what that looks like. There we go. That's kind of its maximum range. If you kind of get right before the edge, that's the general line of thinking. And the thing is, this bad boy can be amplified. If we amplify it, it's a little extra damage and knocks really far back. Meaning, if we do a quick combo... Oh, wait. And end it with that, guess what? Now you're full screen, now you gotta deal with this bullshit again. And a potential crushing blow. Hurts like hell. However, its attack is +2 on block. Even on flawless block. So it's plus, but it's slow. Next we have the alternate additions to both Boulder Bash and Boulder Throw. I forget what it's called. Bouncing Boulder, that's what it is. Bouncing Boulder and Boulder Bash. You can hold it. You can delay it, and you can switch what it becomes. I believe for so if you use Boulder Bash and then hold back as you drop it, it becomes Boulder Bounce. If you hold forward while going for Boulder Bounce, it becomes Boulder Bash. So this exhibits a sort of mix-up situation, where I can just start throwing boulders in random directions, and then I can throw you off with one of these. What's it gonna be? Is this gonna be a bouncing boulder, or is it gonna be a flying boulder that could result in a crushing blow? Speaking of which, I'm actually very curious about something. No, I think it would be too slow anyway, because it's 42 frames. I was gonna say if I could do that and then potentially chain crushing blows or get a big pain. Then we're gonna talk about Earthquake. Now let's talk about Earthquake. Earthquake is probably Cetrion's best move in this variation. It's 22 frames, full screen, tracks the opponent. It's basically a slightly faster version of the Quake, of the Tendril Pull, that sacrifices combo ability for a little bit of speed. And you can actually cancel it if the first hit connects. Oh, that's right, I gotta switch back. Or if it's blocked. That's very important. But here's the catch. It may be -4 at +4. Or -4, sorry. This thing on block, if you let both hits connect, there's a double flawless block gap that leaves it at -15. And it's still -15 if the full thing connects. So this, for defensive meter, keeps you safe. But it requires defensive meter. Once you use it once, you cannot use breakaway. Meaning that you are vulnerable. Speaking of which, I don't think we covered Cetrion. Oh, right, because it's in Variation 3. She only has an armor break in one variation. It's like, wait, what? But there we go. So yeah, so what you can do... end it with Earthquake in order to get some good distance, maybe throw out some boulders, keep him full screen, fish for a crushing blow, that kind of thing. So this is a variation that emphasizes Cetrion's keep away. Remember, we have a full screen crushing blow potential. We have moves that put you at full screen, tracking attacks that allow you to just keep opponents locked down, throwing boulders, delaying the throwing boulders, you're never quite sure what you're gonna get, that kind of thing. Now let's talk about Variation 2, Spring. Unlike the rock-themed variation, Spring Cleaning is all about water. And and one of the best ways to emphasize this is her 2-slot ability, Geyser. This is not a tracking move, but allows Cetrion to summon water at close, mid, far, or very far ranges as a combo ender. Although this scales pretty harshly, so not the best one to be, not the best combo ender in my opinion. Because let's say we do this. That's 21 versus 21. It's basically the same, whatever you really do. Now here's the thing, you can amplify Geyser. If you time it right... Oops, that wasn't supposed to be legit, but... you can get a combo out of this, but here's the thing to bear in mind. They're not up there for very long. The trouble with that is that because they're in the air, they're already being juggled. So the next hit could trigger a breakaway, and since she can't breakaway in this variation, she's kind of screwed. But you can just kind of get this for really nice combos. You can only amplify it once per combo, so you can't really get it multiple times, but that's really good to know regardless. And if you get the timing just right, again, it's tricky, but I swear you can do this. Doing it too slow, I know it. Yeah, it's too slow for me to do right now, especially against a normal character. It's been a while, but you can absolutely get full screen combos in theory with Cetrion this way. However, here's the thing. This move, -44, because the on flawless block, because that second hit just gets ignored. Which is kind of funny. Is it flawless block every time? No. Okay, well it hits twice if they don't flawless block, but it's still -20. And if they flawless block the first one, you're left at, what was that, -40? -44. Yeah, you can absolutely punish this with even certain delayed fatal blows. if Cetrion is stupid enough to try and throw those guys out at close range, even just a normal block is obscenely punishable. But if you manage to flawless block it and you're lucky, just go upstairs, make yourself a snack, come back down, and throw this chick. Now we have to talk about H2 port. I don't like that it's like that, but I know what the gag is. It's a teleport, allowing Cetrion to deal with zoning, to get in, be close enough to throw, or what have you. But the main attraction for this thing is far H2O port. I'm just going to call it H2O port because it's easier for me to say. You can do it in place to fake people out and maybe dodge a projectile, or you could do the far version. Now here's the thing, the far version of this costs both bar, meaning that, guess what? You don't have breakaway and you don't have any defensive meter period until it recovers. So if you do this, you better commit to some serious zoning and defense for the next little while until you get it back and potentially be able to throw out more teleports. And the kicker? You could do it in the air too. Throw them off guard with a short hop teleport, and the next thing you know, you've been thrown. Now let's talk about her final variation, Born Again. Although for this one, I may have to bounce between variations just to show off one of its main gimmicks. Oh, for God's sake, thank goodness. This is easy. I can actually talk about this one with all the stuff. Born Again Cetrion was heralded because finally one of Cetrion's core gimmicks that was in her custom variations became available in a variation. They even kind of hinted at this when they introduced this as an ability in the very first Mortal Kombat 11 patch after the Day 1 patch. We'll talk about that later, but right now we'll talk about Deadly Winds, because this thing went from good to terrifying in Aftermath. First off, it's a projectile. Not a full screen one, mind you, but the range is nothing to sneeze at. And it leaves the opponent at plus 21, especially off of a restand. See? And at close range, it's less, of course, but that's just natural. Now, here's the thing. Look at the pushback on block, and it's -6, meaning that you're safe. But what if you amplify it? More damage, and always plus 10 on hit. And plus 1 on block at this range. This move is straight up monstrous. There doesn't even seem to be a flawless block gap in there either, so hold on. Yeah, you can only flawless block the first hit. But if the first hit comes out, no dice. If the second hit comes out, no dice. And look, you're plus 10, which means I could go for a throw basically for free. Because what are you going to do? Unless you're smart enough to anticipate the throw and just neutral duck it. Or I could go for a poke to assert pressure. Or potentially continue combos. This move is really good. And what's more, it's her armor break. You get stupid plus frames off of this thing. Again, you actually get a little bit less off of breakaway, but because this thing resets damage scaling, if I were to, let's say, just do a hypothetical thing, this wouldn't actually work in a real match, but just bear with me. It always does that damage on breakaway, meaning that you can use this to finish off juggle combos that the opponent is trying to break away from, because the first hit comes out in 18 frames. Yikes! That hurts a lot, and the opponent is in trouble. Now, to talk about conflicts of elements, first off, I need to mention that this version summons random versions of the 4 elements: wind, fire, water, and earth. Now, what do each of these do? Well, to talk about that, we're going to have to jump variations a little bit, because in custom variations, you can set guaranteed versions of these so that you can talk about what those do exactly. So in this variation, which is all about water, outside of the geyser, because funny enough, both geyser and the certain auras are 2-slot variation things. We have first I'm going to do something real quick. Just something really quick. Vapor Halo. This thing, remember, summons a water aura. One thing to keep in mind is that all versions of the auras cost both defensive bars. So you lose your breakaway doing this, and it takes a long time to recover. So, but as you can see, they're active for a really long time. It's active, in fact, for 400 frames. That is just under, or just over, 6.5 seconds, which is a long time in a fighting game. Now, why is this important? What does Vapor Halo do? Well, if Cetrion is in the aura, as you can tell by the water being hovering there, if she's ever, you can tell she's actually out of the aura if the water is moving slowly. And what this does is, let's say Cetrion gets pulled into a combo. Do you see what I just did there? I basically said no. I basically said no to that whole thing. And got a reversal throw punish out of that. How was I able to do that? Basically, this is Aquaman's trait in Mortal Kombat 11. But unlike Aquaman's trait, it's very range dependent. You have to be in this thing. And as a consequence, you actually get to keep all of the chip damage that you actually don't take more chip damage in this, because with Aquaman, it surrounds him, so it's always on him while it's active. But because this is in one spot, this can afford 2 luxuries. One of those luxuries being that you can take less chip damage, and that it lasts longer too. But here's the thing. You need to keep in mind that if you manage to pull off a flawless block, that you won't be able to perform a flawless block attack because you don't have you will not have defensive meter for this thing. However, you will get a crushing blow throw, because that is the requirement for the crushing blow throw. Cetrion needs to be inside of a respective aura to get the crushing blow throw. Now let's talk about the wind. Hallowing winds. This is all about restricting movement. Let's say the opponent wants to try and get in on you and then try and hurt you. Well, slight issue with that. If this is up, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot. Here, I'll even just do it from full screen so that I can show you. Let's say Collector's trying to walk in, maybe dash in, maybe jump in. Well, it's not exactly going to work, because thanks to this, I can set this up, back up, you're trapped, unless you dash, of course, but that requires you dashing. Which, if I back up, I can potentially catch you out of a dash. That becomes basically an impenetrable wall. So if I set up Hallowing Winds, you're trapped because of the push box. I just set this up, backdash, once, maybe twice at a push, and then you're in trouble. The thing to keep in mind, however, is that you're never quite sure what you're going to get. So you can't exactly rely on that outside of general setups. Just a general setup to go for one of the things, and there you go. Then we have Ring of Fire. This is the most straightforward of the auras. The opponent stands in it, they take damage over time for as long as it's active. And once it's fully done, they will have taken a total of 80 damage. But here's the thing. Remember, this buffs the damage of your crushing blow throws. So, back up, throw them on there, we're both inside. They take almost fatal blow damage instead of 310. It's not much, but it could make the difference. If you have either a crushing blow throw or a fatal blow to kill the opponent, it might be better to go for this in that situation. Finally, we have the rock one, which I don't remember what it's called, so bear with me as I go quickly look it up. It's the Circle of Life, which is ironic because this is the thing that's going to kill you the hardest. Now, Circle of Life. If this is up and Cetrion's on the inside, be extremely careful, because this basically offers a free trade. Cetrion does this, she gets hit. Guess what results out of that? They get clobbered. And it's not just a light clobbering either. Doing this multiple times, you only have 3 rocks to work with. And they track, but they don't track permanently. You can kind of get around this with really good mobility or just a fast flying move like Liu Kang's flying kick. But this aura, if it's up, you can see where this could really hurt. And look, it did almost 150 damage. It did almost 15% on Collector in that one sequence. So this can really hurt, especially with multi-hitting attacks and Cetrion being on the inside. But if we go back to Born Again, one thing you have to keep in mind is that it's the Conflux of Elements ability. Meaning that you kind of have to pick and you kind of get screwed because you have a 25% chance of getting what you want. I want fire. I got rocks. Not the end of the world, of course. Rocks is good. Rocks is actually one of the better ones. And wind is really good too, especially in this variation where you have the tornado. You can kind of stagger the opponent inside of here. Water is a bit rough, but remember, you can kind of get yourself out of some rough situations with this one. They're all good. You just can't summon the ones you want all the time. You can't choose which one you want, and that's why a lot of people kind of overlook this thing. Because, general rule of thumb, random elements in fighting games are not good. But generally speaking, I think Cetrion kind of got the best out of the random gambit situation because, again, you have rocks that orbit you that act as bodyguards. You have water, which protects you from blocking, and I think they have different gauge recoveries? No, I don't think so. You have fire for damage over time, and you have the wind. The wind. Give me the wind, please. Thank you. For zoning and keeping opponents away from you. Now, let's wrap things up by talking about her Fatal Blow, which is probably one of the better ones in the game, both in animation and in how it works. This is Weeping Willow. It's a tracking mid, should be overhead in my opinion, but it's a tracking mid that armor breaks and does pretty good damage. This is hard to combo into, but it isn't impossible. And I just realized I forgot to talk about Geyser for something. So if you give me a minute to switch over, I really need to talk about this super fast. Because Geyser has a Crushing Blow. And I forgot to mention that. How do you get the Crushing Blow Geyser? Well, you have to miss the Geyser 3 times in a row. And I think I have easy Crushing Blows on, so that wouldn't have worked. You have to miss this attack 3 times in a row in order to get the Crushing Blow. 3 times in a row is really scary with this attack because, again, you have to basically rely on your opponent messing up thrice in a row, or blocking this thrice in a row. What? Oh. Yeah, let's just turn Easy Crushing Blows on again, real quick. Why does it not work on Collector? Is it because he's a smaller hitbox? It's probably because it's a smaller hitbox, but I know you can usually get that. So we're going to end this with a Fatal Blow combo. Don't forget to be awesome, guys. I'll see you guys on the other side.